Good evening and welcome to the City of Sharonville Council meeting. If everyone would please rise, we're going to have a moment of silent prayer led by then the Pledge of Allegiance led by Mr. Lippert. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You can be seated. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mr. Tankersley?
Here.
Mr. Wilson?
Here.
Mr. Lippert?
Here.
Mr. Duda?
Here.
Mr. Cook?
Here.
Mrs. Knight? Here. Mr. Schmidt?
Here.
Approval of February 24th, 2021 regular council meetings. Are there any additions or corrections? Those stand as written and distributed. Mr. Pietmeyer.
Yes, if I could.
Yes.
Speaking of minutes, I was looking back at the December 15th minutes. On the agenda under rule suspension, among the other items that we had by emergency and so forth, there was a ordinance 2020-56E on for second and third reading, immediate effectivity. And I'm assuming you read from the agenda when you read that at the meeting. However, in the minutes, it reads 2020-66E, not 2020-56E. There was no 2020-66E ordinance, so I would make a motion to amend the minutes to reflect that it was 2020-56E that was voted on with second and third reading, immediate effectivity.
I will address Mr. Lippert. Is that a motion? Okay. And Mr. Wilson, thank you. All those in favor, yes.
Yes.
Those opposed, no. And Mrs. Buhite, if you could please make that amendment. Sure. And I apologize, it is probably this mask. It's hard to hear me, and so. Oh. I get it now.
Perfect storm.
Between the mask and everything else. Okay. Well, thank you for bringing that to our attention. Reports and communication, Mayor Hardman.
First of all, if you recall back at budget time, we discussed 4th of July festivities for 2021 and the possibility of a fireworks display here in Sharonville again. So Anna and Michael Blomer have been working on making that a reality. They've had some conversations with our partners over at Princeton about the availability of their property in order to house that display. And it looks like that those conversations are going very well. So they also asked about the possibility, since the 4th of July is on a Sunday, there is also another large community in our vicinity who does a very large fireworks display on that day, that perhaps we would like to seriously consider doing our event on the Saturday, July 3rd, as part of that weekend. To the group of us that met the other day and having those discussions, it made some sense. Also, they're looking at doing more of a, so rather than our 4th on the loop this year in 2021, looking at focusing our efforts over to that Chester Road corner, a fireworks display, some other type of, I caution calling it a festival because it really won't be a festival, so to speak, but something in line with what we've done with 4th on the Loop. However, inviting hopefully some of the folks over at Princeton as potential performers, as well as maybe even some paid performers, some possibilities of some fundraising efforts on people's part. There's a conversation of maybe doing a short parade as well that would take place over there on Chester Road that would lead into the beginning of those festivities. So those are all initial conversations as Anna and Michael and her team get together to talk about that. But I am pleased to say that we certainly does look like we will be having a fireworks display on 4th of July weekend here in Sharonville in 2021. And again, this is a one-time event we're looking at, so we're hoping to get some feedback as far as what people think about it, the fact that it will be different than what we've done in the past. But I think it's also a good time to try something different just because we're coming out of COVID, dealing with those kind of issues. It'll still be around in July. We know that. So we're dealing with some of those restrictions and things that we might have on our ability to do certain things. So it's a good time to try things different. We're not saying this is a permanent change. 2022, we might be going right back to forth on the loop and all the great things people expect from that. But 2021, that's where the direction we're heading. I'm happy to hear comments or anything as you guys think about that. But I did want to at least publicly let everyone know that 2021, we're going to have fireworks here in the city of Sharonville. And a lot of that is thanks to your support through budget and the help and the assistance of our friends over at Princeton, where that could be possible. And I know it's March, but July is only right around the corner. So it's never too early it's certainly not too early to make plans, but certainly never too early to talk about those things that are coming up. Other than that, I think you have all your other ordinance stuff in front of you that others will be discussing later this evening. Any questions for me?
Does anyone have questions or comments? Did you raise your hand, Mr. Wilson? Oh, Mr. Duda.
Oh, I just want to thank the mayor for the update because it was funny because I asked the same question about what's happening July 4th to Terry and Paul earlier prior to the meeting because it was on my mind. And my birthday's also July 4th and I want to stay in Sharonville this year and see all this stuff. So thank you, Mayor.
So Shayak wants us to throw him a party.
It was on my mind today. It was on my mind literally all day.
He wants to Shayak do today.
No.
We will be having a pre-birthday celebration for Shia
Thank you. Thank you.
on July 3rd.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing none, we'll move to our Safety Service Director, Mr. Lucas.
Thank you. Nothing but the legislation this evening. We have 7 pieces in front of you. The first one, 2021-11, John Creech is here tonight to talk about some property maintenance code recommendations.
Good evening, City Council. This ordinance number 2021-11 will amend section 1305.99 of the Sharonville Codified Ordinances, which is basically as it pertains to penalties that can be imposed by the magistrate of the Sharonville Mayor's Court for repeat offenders of the Sharonville Property Maintenance Code. That's the proposal. The current property maintenance code that was adopted back in on April 25th, 2000, it provides the city the avenue to prosecute offenders of that property maintenance code to the Sharonville Mayor's Court if those violations are not addressed within a timely manner. At present, if an offender is taken to court and they are found in violation, the property maintenance code classifies those offenses as a 4th degree misdemeanor or misdemeanor at the 4th degree. There's a maximum penalty of $250 that could be assessed by the magistrate presiding over that court. That's not by our department, that's by the local magistrate. So as an example, if an offender commits a violation, goes to court, they're found guilty, the magistrate imposes that $250 fine, and then 2 weeks later, an offender does the same violation, we would have to start the process back all over again. And then an ultimate conviction would also be a 4th degree misdemeanor up to a potential max penalty of $250. So the proposal before you is to address these repeat violations, which we think have been increasing. If you take a look at the website with that has our up-to-date code enforcement cases. So you'll see certain areas, there are some repeat offenders in that with particular properties. So the proposal is to make the repeat violations go up from a 4th degree misdemeanor to a higher or lower degree, but a higher potential penalty from 3rd, 2nd to 1st for each subsequent violation that occurs within any 12-month period. So what that means is they could be subject to a higher penalty by the magistrate that provides over that court. I did speak to City of Springboro Building Department. They have the same ordinance already in place. And in their opinion, they do think that it really works well to deter a lot of repeat offenders, which is exactly what we're trying to address. And just so you all know, and anyone watching, violations don't just automatically appear at the Sharonville Mayor's Court. There's a whole process we go through. Typically, we receive a complaint. Inspector goes out, verifies that complaint. They then send either a courtesy letter or a violation notice. It just depends on the severity of the violation. And we typically give the offender between 20 and 30 days to comply, depending upon the severity of that violation. So there's usually ample time to address the violation. And we're always willing to work with people with extenuating circumstances, to get properties into compliance. So that's the ordinance. It was discussed at the February 2nd Law Committee.
Are there any questions? Thank you so much.
Skipping ahead to ordinance 2021-18E, the balance of the legislation this evening is financial in nature, so Scott will be talking about those. But 2021-18E is a tax abatement request for an expansion at Cuddle Products. Tom Rodebaugh, the president of Cuddle, is in the audience this evening. But I'll just start with some background. Cuddle moved to the city from the city of Madeira about 10 years ago when they built an approximately 155,000 square foot building, and the city gave them a 10-year abatement back then. They far exceeded the payroll that they anticipated back then, and due to their growth, they had an expansion in 2016 of $1.6 million or so, and the city subsequently gave them a 10-year abatement for that expansion. They have another expansion in front of them of about a $1.6 million as well. So they are requesting, and administration is recommending, another 10-year abatement. The reason for this expansion is they do hygiene-related products, basically shampoos, soaps, sanitizers, a very high water user, and they need to, because of their growth, expand their water processing area. So with the expansion of their water processing area, they have to go into their current lab. So the expansion is primarily going to be lab related. And I don't know, Tom, if you want to come up and say anything else related to the project, but.
I'll just make a couple other comments. My name's Tom Rodenbaugh, president of Cuddle, and we appreciate the partnership with the city. As Mr. Lucas said, we moved in 10 years ago. Over that 10 years, we've increased the facility once. We've doubled our payroll, which has been nice over 10 years. And we've grown our number of teammates about 63% in the last 10 years. Both abatements have helped us do that. And of course, the increased payroll tax helps from $1 that we can increase. So I'm here for questions, and I'll leave it at that.
Did anyone have questions this evening? Thank you so much for coming out. We're so glad you're in Sharonville.
All right, thank you.
The other thing related to that, we got a call Friday from Kevin Donnelly with, or I think it was Ian Smith actually, with Ready Cincinnati. And in all likelihood, the state is also going to be assisting with this expansion, with the grants. So again, the request this evening is to match what was done in the past and go with a 10-year CRA abatement. And then Scott will talk about the balance of the legislation this evening.
Good evening. We'll start with Ordinance 2021-16. This authorizes the Safety Service Director to enter an agreement with the Ohio Attorney General for debt collection kind of associated with our tax office. We've had great success over the years, and especially the last couple with our mayor's court and the process there. There's a lot of cases that that we have that are not practical or efficient to go through mayor's court. And this is a great tool to have available for those. So we're excited to get that started. Ordinance 2021-17E. The small business grant program, the 2021 Small Business Grant Program that we that drew on the $700,000 we set aside at the end of 2020 with Ordinance 5070. That's had great success. We've had a pretty good demand that's flown through, especially the last few weeks. And we are requesting another $150,000 that will be drawn on that $700,000 that we appropriated back in December. 2021 19E, also small business related. This is the facade grant. So this is requesting a seventh installment of the facade grant program. We think has had a lot of success. This would be another $100,000. This is appropriating funds as well. There's several appropriations on here, that 19, 20, and 21. Typically, we would not make these emergencies, but each of these kind of have a meaty authorization section. So we added, we made these as emergencies to get moving forward with that, with those activities. 2021 20E is authorizing the purchase of a new skid steer and the disposing of basically the one we're replacing. It was not budgeted, but came up with some pretty costly, unexpected repairs. And we have Public Works. This is a piece of equipment they use a lot, but they have some big plans on it the next couple of months to help out on demolition of Gorman Park. And so in a lot of ways, this purchase will sort of start to pay for itself with the work they're doing there in-house. And 21E, which kind of starts to sound like a riddle. This authorizes the return of the expansion funds to Hamilton County and appropriates those dollars, the remaining portion of the $3 million. Any questions about any of those?
Anybody? Thank
Thank you.
you. Okay. For my report this evening, I know you guys all got excited over 4th of July. Sharonfest is coming back. We don't know what it's going to look like, but we know there's going to be music and there's going to be beer, and we hope that the community comes out. Rides, food, things like that's all being worked out now. It's kind of last minute, but that's okay. They are very excited to be able to do something, and we will be within the governor's guidelines. So whatever the governor says, we will do. If you have to wear a mask, you wear a mask. And, you know, but at least we'll be able to sit on the grass and listen to music as a group, 6 feet apart. So, so that will be coming. And so you want to save the date for July 23rd and 24th. So we're really excited about that. Other than that, I don't have anything else this evening. And I'm going to go to our clerk of council, Mrs. Buhite.
Thank you. We received a Trex transfer request by Raoul Petroleum LLC located at 4001 Hawk Road. I sent that around. There were no objections, and so that will be signed and returned.
Perfect. And before I go to our Mr. Pete Meyer, the law director, I do want to say we did receive the nicest thank you note, but I forgot it on my counter tonight because I had several meetings this evening. The Sharonville Fine Arts, or the Cultural Arts Center, however you want to call it, sent us a very nice thank you for supporting them. So I just wanted to share that with all of council. They were very grateful. And we'll move on to our law director, Mr. Pete Meyer.
I'd like to request an executive session this evening at the end of council involving a matter involving litigation, if I could.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you. Residents desiring to be heard tonight. Is there anyone that wants to be heard? Just so you know, for our new resident visiting us, if you wanted to talk, you could come up and give us your address and speak, but I won't put you on the spot. I won't put you on the spot tonight. Council committees, community development, Mr. Tankersley.
Thank you. No report.
Okay, Community Services, Mr. Lippert.
Thank you. We met on March 3rd. The written reports from Public Works and Mr. Blomer and Recreation are on file with Mrs. Buhite. Amongst other things, you'll notice that the old swings in Gower Park are, I think they're all the way demolished as of today. And new ones are going up. I think that was a community development block grant, I'm pretty sure.
Yes,
That's all I have. Thank you.
yes, they will be closing that down, I believe, and working on that. So I
No more tire swings?
don't think.
Too many injuries.
I don't think there's any more tire swings, and there's more inclusive.
There's a something else, but it's not a tire swing.
Similar.
There is more inclusive playground equipment too.
I'm
so-
sure there are.
One of the comments about the tire swing was there was a lot of throwing up. So
Yuck. Okay, now we know why there's no more tire swing. Budget and Finance, Mr. Cook.
Thank you. We met on February 23rd. We had discussed the convention center expansion. So we looked at the financial data for the city and the county. We did a risk assessment. And essentially, when we looked at everything, when the industry is going to turn around and so on, that we would not proceed with the convention center expansion at this time. And that's my report for Budget and Finance.
And Project Oversight.
Project Oversight, we also met on February 23rd. So we talked about how do we track, do future tracking of our projects. We discussed, maybe some sort of gate review process. Administration gave us a sample and there was only a few tweaks we did to that of information of each project that would be presented to council. And we also reviewed all current projects.
Are there
That's
any
my report.
questions?
Thank you.
Are there any questions? Seeing none, we'll go to Mrs. Knight and Honored Citizens.
tonight I'm honoring all our senior citizens, especially the ones that have been in the retirement homes. I talked to my one friend who April 2nd, has not left her floor. She drives. She luckily has a husband, her and her husband are together, but they're in assisted living and they have not left. They have not been outside since April 4th. So I am honoring all our senior citizens because I know our seniors up at Greensfelders, they're not doing a lot either. I tend to communicate with quite a few of them and they're afraid to go out and they do see family. But I just thought tonight I'd honor them.
Oh, that's very nice. Maybe they should go out and porch sit or something. Just outside. Mayor?
Well, just to follow up while we're talking about our seniors and specifically Golden View Acres, we are working with, I assume the Department of Health or other folks. One of the things that the governor has been talking about with regard to the COVID vaccine is getting it out into communities and into places where it's needed. So they are coordinating a vaccination site at Golden View Acres. So our plan is to use a vacant apartment that exists there and make that available to the residents of Golden View Acres for vaccination. I think there's actually a date scheduled, and I don't know what that is off the top. Might very well.
I thought it was.
I know
this
it's coming
week.
up real quick.
Yeah.
So that's some good news of us looking out. I think Anna kind of helped put that together and made all that possible so that we can get some much needed relief for the seniors in our community. So hopefully they appreciate that and taking advantage of it. So.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Knight. Law and Public Safety, Mr. Schmidt.
Thank you. The next, there are 5 Tuesdays in March. So our next Law and Public Safety Committee meeting will be on the 23rd at 4 o'clock in council chambers. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll move this down just a tad so you can understand me now. Rule suspension motion, first and only reading with immediate effectivity for ordinances 2021-17E, 2021-18E, 2021-19E, 2021-20E, 2021-21E, first and only reading with a 30-day effectivity is ordinance 2021-16E. Is there a motion? So moved by Mr. Tankersley, second by Mr. Wilson. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, yes. Those opposed, no, and that does stand. Unfinished business, please.
It's a third reading of ordinance 2021-11, amending section 1305.99 of the Sharonville Municipal Code.
Is there a motion to pass ordinance 2021-11? So moved by Mr. Duda, second by Mrs. Knight. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Mr. Tankersley,
Yes.
Mr. Wilson,
Yes.
Mr. Lippert,
Yes.
Mr. Duda,
Yes.
Mr. Cook,
Yes.
Mrs. Knight,
Yes.
and Mr. Schmidt.
Yes.
Great old house.
All right.
Good bones, wrap around. the
Ordinance 2021-11 has been approved.
New business.
Okay. First and only reading of ordinance 2021-16, authorizing the Safety Service Director to enter into a delinquent debt collection agreement with the Ohio Attorney General.
Is there a motion to pass ordinance 2021-16? So moved by Mr. Wilson, second by Mr. Lippert. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Mr. Tankersley,
Yes.
Mr. Wilson,
Yes.
Mr. Lippert,
Yes.
Mr. Duda,
Yes.
Mr. Cook,
Yes.
Mrs. Knight,
Yes.
and Mr. Schmidt.
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 2021-16 has been approved. First and only reading of emergency ordinance 2021-17E, extending the 2021 COVID-19 Small Business Relief Grant Program.
Is there a motion to pass ordinance 2021-17E? So moved by Mr. Tankersley, second by Mr. Wilson. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Mr. Tankersley,
Yes.
Mr. Wilson,
Yes.
Mr. Lippert,
Yes.
Mr. Duda,
Yes.
Mr. Cook,
Yes.
Mrs. Knight,
Yes.
Mr. Schmidt.
Yes.
Emergency ordinance 2021-17E has been approved. First and only reading of emergency ordinance 2021-18E, authorizing the Safety Service Director to enter into a community reinvestment area development incentive agreement with Cuddle Products Company and declaring an emergency.
Is there a motion to pass ordinance 2021-18E? So moved by Mr. Lippert, second by Mr. Tankersley. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Mr. Tankersley,
Yes.
Mr. Wilson,
Yes.
Mr. Lippert,
Yes.
Mr. Duda,
Yes.
Mr. Cook,
Yes.
Mrs. Knight,
Yes.
and Mr. Schmidt.
Yes.
Emergency ordinance 2021-18E has been approved.
There you go.
All right.
Thank you.
Next one is emergency ordinance 2021-19E, authorizing a continuation of the Small Business Facade Improvement Grant Program and amending 2021 appropriations for the 401 Capital Fund and declaring an emergency.
Is there a motion to pass ordinance 2021-19E? So moved by Mrs. Knight, second by Mr. Cook. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Mr. Tankersley,
Yes.
Mr. Wilson,
Yes.
Mr. Lippert,
Yes.
Mr. Duda,
Yes.
Mr. Cook,
Yes.
Mrs. Knight,
Yes.
Mr. Schmidt.
Yes.
Emergency ordinance 2021-19E has been approved. First and only reading of ordinance 2021-20E, amending 2021 appropriations for the 401 Capital Fund and authorizing the Safety Service Director to enter into a contract to purchase a replacement skid steer and dispose of excess equipment and declaring an emergency.
Is there a motion to pass ordinance 2021-20E? So moved by Mr. Duda, second by Mr. Tankersley. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Mr. Tankersley,
Yes.
Mr. Wilson,
Yes.
Mr. Lippert,
Yes.
Mr. Duda,
Yes.
Mr. Cook,
Yes.
Mrs. Knight,
Yes.
Mr. Schmidt.
Yes.
Ordinance 2021-20E has been approved. First and only reading of emergency ordinance 2021-21E, amending 2021 appropriations for the 607 Convention Center Expansion Fund, and authorizing return of funds to Hamilton County and declaring an emergency.
Is there a motion to pass ordinance 2021-21E? So moved by Mr. Lippert, second by Mrs. Knight. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Mr. Tankersley.
Yes.
Mr. Wilson.
Yes.
Mr. Lippert.
Yes.
Mr. Duda.
Yes.
Mr. Cook.
Yes.
Mrs. Knight.
Yes.
Mr. Schmidt.
Yes.
Emergency ordinance 2021-21E has been approved. First, and this is just a first reading of Resolution 2021-R02. Resolution authorizing the Safety Service Director to enter into a memorandum of understanding with other communities and organizations that comprise the Sharon Creek Collaborative to plan for, construct, and maintain the Sharon Creek Trail. That's just a first reading.
Okay. This is another opportunity. If anyone would like to be heard before council this evening? Are there any other matters to become before council? Mr. Tankersley?
Did we forget about Mr. Cunningham and Mr. Reed this evening?
Their next meeting,
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
unless you wanted to hear from them,
I didn't
but I
want
can
to
tell
feel
you they
left
don't have a
out.
report. Yeah, their next meeting, but thank you. I would never forget those two guys. Nope, not at all. Okay, we will take a motion. We will be going into Mrs. Knight,
I do have something to say.
I'm hoping you're going to announce it,
What?
the root beer stand.
Oh, well, yeah, the reefer stand is open. I should be there tonight, but I had to get off. Yes, the soft opening was unbelievable. Not real soft. And yesterday and today were great. So I hope everybody comes out. But I'm going to report on one of our shark swimmers. And that's why I was trying to get on my phone. His mom sent me all the information. Adam Cheney, who graduated last year, we could not honor him. We honored him, but he could not make it. He is going to the University of Florida. This past weekend, they had their big championship, the SEC championships. Adam won the 50 free as a freshman at 18.76. Second fastest time in history for 17, 18-year-olds behind Caleb Dresser, who went 1867, and that was in March of 18. He's seventh overall in all-time men performance any age. He came in second in the 100 back, and he doesn't really swim the 100 back. And he is going to go, he did a bunch of other things too, but he is going to the NCAA championships in Greensboro on March 24th through the 27th. And this will be his last competition as an 18-year-old. But hopefully he will be going to the Olympics because the people he's swimming with is Olympic people. So I just want to let you know that we have a great swimmer from the Sharonville Sharks. He's a grandson of Susan Runyon. I don't know if a lot of you know her.
Yeah.
So that's her grandson. And hopefully his sister will be our head coach this year. So Blaze.
Oh,
So I just had to
how special. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, that's great news.
Yeah, when Cheryl sent it off to me, I was
Basketball's not
just,
the only thing that has, like March Madness.
yeah,
Swimming does too.
yes, we do. Thank
Okay.
you.
I know, Mike, it's sacrilegious, but good. Thank you for sharing though. That's very exciting for their family. Anyone else? Okay, when we come out of executive session, we will have nothing but to adjourn. So is there a motion to go into executive session? So moved by Mrs. Knight, second by Mr. Lippert. Is there any discussion on it? Seeing none, we're going to do a roll call.
Mr. Tankersley.
Yes.
Mr. Wilson.
Yes.
Mr. Lippert.
Yes.
Mr. Duda.
Yes.
Mr. Cook.
Yes.
Mrs. Knight.
Yes.
Mr. Schmidt.
Yes.
And we are going into executive session regarding the Ohio Revised Code 121.22G, number 3, and that's conferencing with our attorney for public body concern disputes involving public body that are subject to pending or imminent action or court action. So that's why. Thank you.